welcome. Coming to you from Varginha, Brazil. I'm Josh.
And I'm John, and I just left a Brazilian steakhouse myself, although the meat was really smelly.
You might have been at the wrong place. But this is the Geek ETC podcast, where we dive into all things you can geek out about. We are back.
It's them boys.
We them boys.
The Geek ETC fellas.
Them fellas?
Them fellas.
We them fellas.
Yeah, it's okay.
The Dos Amigos.
Dos Amigos, yeah. That could be, that's
that sounds classier.
Does it?
It's better than Tres Hombres.
Tres Hombres. Well, that's a little bit of an inside joke there.
Yeah.
Gotta stay away from those. That's what our acting coach said.
Right.
How have you been, buddy?
Good.
Yeah?
Good. Busy, as always.
Yeah.
You know, that's life. Dealing with, working on more podcast stuff as usual.
Yeah. Working on podcast stuff, editing things, working on maybe new characters for Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Wouldn't you know it? Our last episode, we had a D&D podcast, and we talked about a game that we were playing later that day, and specifically mentioned about how, sometimes your characters die, but we've got a lot lined up. Lo and behold, I did a stupid move, and my character died.
That's right. No, for real, it was a funny situation.
I fell victim to a beholder's death ray.
And yeah, I asked you, I was like, it's a death ray, right? Like, you understand it's a death ray?
No, I didn't know. You just kept saying it's a death ray.
Well, because I couldn't say if you die, if you reduce to zero hit
could.
points. Well, that takes away. I'm the GM, Josh, as we decided.
Well, yeah. But I know it's a death ray. Didn't know what death ray did, but yes, I knew it was a death ray.
Well,
one would think the name implies it, but it was also, we had been playing for 7 hours.
Played for 7 hours. So if you guys listen to our last episode, our Dungeons and Dragons homebrew episode, yeah, that took the better part of the evening, and everybody had a blast, and it was a lot of fun. It was a really successful outing for us. Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. We didn't quite finish the story arc, but that's perfectly fine. We're right towards a big climactic moment, so I'm excited for when we get to play our next game.
Yeah, we're queued up for it. Now, you said there was something that came out this week, right, that you were wanting to talk about?
Speaking of games and stuff, I picked up that new Legend of Zelda.
Oh, snap.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay.
It's kind of the current new hotness, getting 10 out of 10s.
A lot of
hundreds out of every review site that exists. It's one of the highest rated. I think it's the highest rated game on Switch that's came out.
Wow.
Which I think the other Breath of the Wild had the spot beforehand, but now this one overtook it.
Well, tell me about it.
Well, it is the first Legend of Zelda game I've ever even played.
You've never played Zelda before?
No. Dude,
I've not played Zelda before either. I thought you were a Zelda dude, though.
Oh, no. That was one series. I mean, most of my childhood was, as a lot of people, was very engrossed in Nintendo properties, Mario, Donkey Kong, a lot of those other things, but we just never had a Zelda game. But one of my good buddies was big into Zelda, and so I would watch him play them sometimes, Wind Waker and some of those ones on GameCube. And they always kind of looked fun, a lot of puzzle aspects to them, the temples you go into and whatnot. And they always had really interesting graphics and stuff. But I just never had one, so I never had a chance to play them. And, Breath of the Wild came out. I heard everybody that I follow online and stuff, they all, everybody and their brother was talking about how good it was. And so I had been interested in it in a while, and I actually bought my nephew that game for a couple Christmases ago and kind of watched him play it a little bit. I've thought about asking him if I could borrow it.
Did he like it?
I have no idea. I don't even know that he's got more into playing NBA.
Oh yeah.
And Madden games and stuff.
Yeah.
Makes sense if you know him and his dad and their whole family. So yeah, who knows if he's even played it anymore, but this one kind of came out and I watched some reviews and like I said, I've been wanting to play one, and I've been looking for some kind of bigger kind of open world game to dive into, because there hasn't really had anything that's really grabbed my attention as of late.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I just haven't really been playing many games. And I had yet to find any game on Switch that really hooked me or grabbed me. Most of the I think just the catalog on Switch, most of that didn't really appeal to me that much. Like one
Yeah.
of the few things on there on Nintendo stuff that typically would have my attention would be Pokemon games and stuff, but all the ones that came out on that have had so many problems.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they've had a lot of issues with them and stuff, and like even just the amount of effort they've put into some of them graphically and stuff, when you compare it to something like Breath of the Wild, they seem just like fairly poorly done. You're like, a game that came out like years ago looks this good, but your current Pokemon game you just put out, like Legends of Arceus or what is it? Scarlet and Violet that just came out. Like some of the graphical stuff in it, you're like, how is this a new game? And it looks like way worse than that older game that came out. But regardless, I heard a lot of good stuff about it, so I decided to pull the trigger on it and got my first Zelda game. And wouldn't you know it, I'm probably 8 hours into it at this point.
Yeah.
A decent bit. And I'm barely out of the kind of one of the first areas you get to.
Really? You're enjoying you're enjoying the exploration aspect of it.
It's very fun. My wife actually sent me a Reddit post earlier today that I thought was pretty funny. It was on the Tears of the Kingdom subreddit, and the title was "This Game is a Trap."
Oh.
And it said, "The whole game is an exercise in distraction. I'm 20 hours in, and I still haven't gotten to Rito Village," which I think is one of like the first places the missions are supposed. The main mission takes you, like the main storyline. Like that's when once you kind of get past the tutorial part, and it like really opens up. That's one of like the first places you go. I haven't even got there. I'm not entirely sure what it is yet, but he said, I walk like 50 yards and it's like, oh, what's that? And then I'm on the way to the distraction and then but wait, what's that? Every time. I'm losing hours exploring without doing anything. I'm 42 with 2 kids. I don't have time for this. I'll be dead before I finish this game.
Wow.
By the way, I love this game.
Wow. Okay.
So already I can kind of agree with him that like I haven't even found really the best method to even make any money. And like I've tried venturing out to some of the other kind of main areas of the main map, and every direction I go into, I run into enemies that are just way too strong for me at the moment.
Ooh, okay.
Or I would find like a store and all the clothes is like thousands of rupees, and I have like 10 rupees. So, like I said, I put maybe close almost to 10 hours into it, and I don't even know how to like. I don't have any money or any kind of. I haven't really leveled up very much yet.
Wow.
But I felt like I've done a lot.
Well,
But in reality, I haven't done much.
it's kind of like life. Maybe Zelda's just a terrible like employee. You know, like how there's like some workers who feel like they're like, I work so hard for this company and blah blah blah, and then they're like the laziest person.
I believe you mean Link.
Oh, Link.
In reference to the main character.
Zelda is the princess.
Right. Zelda is the princess.
I'm stupid.
It's okay. One of my...
Maybe he took her name.
Speaking of that as well, actually,
I'm so
one
stupid.
of my favorite people that I follow online, Rocco Bodie, who is part of the Mega 64 crew.
Mm-hmm.
He's a like master in just kind of like they do like sketch comedy stuff and a lot of video game related things and whatnot. But he's really great at subvertly and kind of covertly getting just random people on the internet to get upset about stuff that he's being satirical about.
He's a provocateur, is what you're saying.
Kind of, I guess you could kind of see it as that. But he tweeted out the other day a thing that it's like obvious, like if you know them, you know, and he's done this a few times, it's very obviously satire if you know them and stuff. But his tweet was very interesting that the new Legend of Zelda game opens with a princess with full voice acting, but Zelda himself is not allowed to speak. This is where games are now. Men aren't allowed to have a voice.
That's good.
We wanted Hyrule, we got Wokistan.
That's funny.
So, yeah, very obviously satire. Even, you know, again, calls Link Zelda.
Yeah.
And at the time this was on here, like this was posted 2 days ago, and at the time of posting, it was 13 hours old. it had 1,200 retweets, 9,000 likes, and like 310,000 interactions.
Wow.
And so it just exploded, and there's so many subreddits and so many other people on the internet that were just like fuming over, like, this idiot doesn't even know what he's talking about. Within the first 10 minutes, they call him Link like 1,000 times, and anybody knows that Zelda's the prince, and everybody was getting so upset about it.
All right, so let's keep calling it Zelda so we can get that many interactions on our Instagram, huh?
There you go.
This will be our new short.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you don't follow them, go check out Mega 64. They actually I think in June, in the first week or two of June, they hit their 20th anniversary of making internet content. That they were some of the first people doing it. They're kind of the old guard of YouTube videos and video game related skits and things. A lot of people still don't know about them, but again, they've been doing it forever, and they've been hilarious forever. So go check out Mega 64, and yeah, tell them what's up.
Well, so right now where you're at with your playthrough, what would you give it? At the place that you're at right now, 1 through 10.
That's tough. Again, because I don't have any other Zelda games to compare it to.
Well, just as a game in general then.
I mean, as a game so far, I'm having a lot of fun in it.
That's good.
So I would probably put it at least an 8 as a great game so far. Like, yeah, I've had a lot of fun, and for me to be able to dive into a game that I have no really history with and don't really know anything about the story much, other than this sequel to a game that's came out. But in a way, from what I understand, all the Zeldas are kind of sequels of all of them. The story, it's kind of the same story that kind of sort of repeats itself.
Yeah.
Just in slightly different thematics. But, I mean, so far, yeah, the gameplay and all this stuff is super fun. It introduced this really awesome crafting mechanic where you're able to, any object or any item you find, you can combine with any other object. Like, you have this ability called, I think, like I've played it, I don't know how many hours, I forgot what it's called. I don't know if it's called the Master Hand or the Ultimate Hand or something like that you can use to manipulate objects around you. And if you put two objects close together, they'll kind of glue together. And you can do that so you'll come across this pile of just like wood and wagon wheels and stuff. And so you can use these pieces of wood just to craft a wagon. You just put the pieces together and they just snap all together and you've got a wagon. And then you can get these extra like special powered devices, like they're basic devices, such as like you can have a fan or a rocket or a glider or a balloon. And it's these things you can use, so you can create some kind of contraption and then put these things on it to power it in some way or variety. So you create the basic cart and then you throw, wheels on the side, like actual powered wheels on the side and the steering wheel. And now you've got an actual functioning cart you can drive.
A car in Zelda?
Yeah. But in one instance on one of the reviews that I saw, that a guy, he had a car and he drove up into this dead end. There's a big mountain. And he's like, well, I'm kind of stuck. So he just pops out a balloon, puts the balloon on top of it, and then just flies over the mountain. Now you've got a flying car. And so it's purely up to your imagination on what, apparently, like, there's some videos of people that are building like mechs.
Okay.
Out of them. Like, they're getting extremely advanced with some of this stuff, and they're building like full-on mechs out of some of this stuff. I haven't really seen that, but I heard someone talking about it. I'm actually on Mega 64 the other day. But then you can also do it with your weapons. So if you have a sword or just even a stick or whatever your weapon is, you can combine it with any item you find, whether it be like a mob drop, like something that an enemy drops down, your food, boulders you find around the world, or like tree trunks, or another weapon. Like, someone took a gardening hoe and put like a pike on the end of it.
Yeah.
And it's just this absurdly long weapon for no reason. But you can just take a stick and then put like a big boulder on the end of it, and you've got this like huge club that can just like break through stuff. So it has a lot of imaginative constructing in it.
Interesting.
Which is pretty cool. And I'm having a lot of fun with that.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Preemptive 8 out of 10.
Likely to improve.
Likely to improve. Well, you talking about that made me think of, well, just because I was trying to find something fun to do yesterday, and I saw Xbox mention like, hey, did you know you could like play music from Amazon or Spotify or whatever on your app through here,
Oh,
and it
wow.
will just play through your headset.
I know that there used to be things like that back in the day. Like I remember back on the original one, you could load your CDs
Yeah. Oh yeah.
on
yeah.
the stuff, and then most games they would have in the sound options you could choose like Xbox soundtrack.
Yep.
And you could play your music, which I thought that was awesome back in the day.
Well, that's what I was doing last night, and I was, I started off playing a little Hell Let Loose, and Sabaton came on.
Oh, nice.
And so that was actually pretty cool. And then I wound up like, I'm gonna listen to a podcast, because I was just waiting for some of my stuff to dry. I was waiting for some of my clothes to wash for jiu-jitsu the next day.
Oh yeah.
And so I was playing until, playing for a little bit, and then I was gonna go put them in the dryer and go to bed. And I turned on a podcast, and started playing Elite Dangerous, a space flying game, and I was just running around, just hauling cargo around. It was real relaxing.
Building some credits while you're listening to the podcast.
Yeah, super easy. So
That's what's up.
if you guys ever want to do that with us, I suggest you log on to Xbox, download the Spotify app or something like that, turn on the Geeky podcast.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, listen to us.
Listen to us.
While you're playing Minecraft.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or something. I don't know.
Exactly. I also wanted to bring up something, a little venture that I've not talked to Josh about. I'm kind of springing on him now, but I'm going to call it Vision Quest. And that's, hey, if you guys want to join our crew with our Patreon, as little as $1 a month,
Okay.
you can join our crew. And you know what? All that money we're going to put towards Josh's LASIK surgery, because we talked about it last time, and I thought it was like Vision Quest. That's perfect. We should do that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's kind of like a throwback.
It's the Vision Quest to fix my eyeballs.
Yeah, because a quest for you to get vision. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is. That we had not spoken on this before.
We had not. No, it was just.
But I also don't seriously know if I want LASIK or not. So.
Oh well, Josh, for the patrons.
For the patron. Okay. Well.
So Vision Quest, guys. Vision Quest 2023. Josh.
Ultimately, if you're contributing to the creation of
That's right.
of this podcast and associated content, bonus content that we'll be coming out with. Helping fund new audio gear potentially. Maybe some, camera gear for future adventures out looking for, cryptids or something.
Ooh.
Depending. But who knows? Yeah.
So yeah, join our Patreon. So that sounds way cooler. All that bonus content and things we're planning on bringing your way. Plus,
real close to having our Discord server done, where we can start building a community of geeks to talk about all sorts of cool topics over there.
And you kind of fit in with your glasses there. So maybe we should just leave it like that.
All right, Mr. Good Eyesight.
But yeah, absolutely. Give us a follow on there. Or sorry, join the crew, pay $1 a month. And we would love to have you.
Yeah. Welcome to the crew.
This week, Josh, we're geeking out about.
Well, you mentioned that podcast you were listening to.
Mm-hmm.
And what that happened to be about is the Varginha UFO incident.
And the associated documentary called
Moment of Contact.
Moment of Contact. So yeah, you told me about it. I had seen it like while surfing Amazon a few times trying to find something to watch with the wife, and I didn't think she would enjoy it too much, but she's just gonna fall asleep anyways. So
is she the type to fall asleep in documentary things like that, or?
She likes them. She definitely wants to watch them. But, she works hard all day with kids and being an artist and doing cool stuff. And
right.
So she gets all tuckered out. And so she does fall asleep typically when we're trying to watch stuff in the evenings, even though she doesn't want to. She'll she really has to tune in.
Right. Yeah. My wife has to do the same thing. She works very hard as well. And so it's tough. We'll maybe watch a little bit of a YouTube video or something in the evenings, but it's not long before. Especially when she gets home and eats dinner, then she's passing out.
Yeah, she's.
And I don't blame her.
I don't blame her either. And so, so I was like, "Hey, babe, Josh wants to do an episode on this, so we, got to watch." She didn't care at all. She's like, "Okay, that's fine." And she fell asleep. But I watched it. I was already interested just from not every single documentary on aliens gets me going, and as a throwback. we've already done an alien episode, right? And that was kind of our like...
That's kind of a general overview, the topic on
Yes.
aliens as a thing.
That was just kind of like a really far out look at it without... And we told you that we were going to get into specific incidents, and this is the first episode where we're doing that.
Right.
And so I was happy to do it, excited to do it, and just watching the documentary trailer, I was like, I'm interested. So it takes place in Varginha, Brazil.
Yes.
1996 in January. Interesting. It's not a huge city by any stretch. And one of the things I thought was interesting when I was looking at it today, I was like, I wonder where Varginha is at, because I'm I pretend to be Brazilian 1 hour a day when I roll around.
When you're doing jiu-jitsu.
When I do jiu-jitsu. And, it's like in a perfect triangulation. It's like triangulated between, it's on the line in between Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and Belo Horizonte.
Yeah.
And which are all big cities.
Right.
And I really just wanted to say Belo Horizonte because I know how to say it. So I shout out to the guy that came and trained from Belo Horizonte at my gym. But I was like, oh, interesting. That makes more sense why something would be flying over. If there was something flying over there, if there were aliens and they were like, hey, let's go check out what Brazil is doing, fly by there. Because there's huge cities there.
Yeah.
I think Belo Horizonte is the one that people don't probably know about as much unless they're...
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, and it's 2.2 million people, and I don't know how many people are in Sao Paulo or Rio, but a lot. And especially it's not... I think Carnival starts in February, and they're probably loading up for that,
Right.
So there's probably a lot of people out. I think they just probably had a celebration in January there too, and it was probably a pretty happening place to be.
Right. That makes sense. So yeah, that's, kind of, we'll maybe do kind of a quick sort of overview and then dive into some of the details. But essentially, on one afternoon, January 20th, 1996, I would have only been 5 at the time.
I'm 7.
Yeah. You were 7 by that point? Yeah.
Well, ish. I don't know. I mean, I was born in 89.
Yeah.
Seps.
You would have been 6.
Oh, I'm all mathed out.
It's fine. But anyway, we were kids at that time. But apparently there's just this one day, and I'm trying to remember if they said if there was like a storm that was happening or something. I can't remember. But essentially, a lot of the townsfolk witnessed a, what was being called a UFO crash in the city.
Well, outside
the city.
Outside the city, there was
there's some farmland nearby.
There was some people who had seen the UFO acting erratically while hovering over the city.
That's what I meant. They saw it from the city, but then it crashed outside.
And then there was a farmers who had seen it, and they had seen where it looked like it had been torn open and was struggling, and then it wound up crashing on the outskirts.
They mentioned about it like looking like it was wobbling in the air.
It was one of the best descriptions I've ever heard of, like somebody saying like a craft was struggling when they said it looked like a washing machine that was like bouncing around.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's a super good visual. So yeah, it crashes on the outskirts of Virginia, and one guy sees it and he kind of thinks wasn't sure if it was like an airplane. So he starts like going down the road or whatever to find it. And, several of the folks that described it as typical tic tac or cigar shaped UFO.
Mm-hmm.
They described it as like a silver submarine shaped about the size of like a small bus.
Yeah.
And
like a Volkswagen bus kind of thing.
Exactly. And, it crashes on the outskirts. He gets out, he finds this metal. It crumples in a weird way when he looks at it because I guess he picked it up because of the way it looked.
Yeah.
And horrible ammonia stench that he couldn't get out of his nose for so long.
Yeah.
And he did an interview on the news for it, and he really kind of didn't do anything else until the Moment of Contact documentary crew came through, and then they met up with him.
This guy's particular story, he basically went and saw this crash, and he wasn't there long before I think it was the military showed up,
Yeah.
and said, "You have to leave."
Yeah.
And he was just like, "What's going on? What is this? You know, why'd I leave?" And then they like, it wasn't until they pointed their guns at him and they're like pointing their rifles at him, saying like, "You like leave now."
Which I love Brazil and I love Brazilians, but if a Brazilian police officer or soldier points their gun at you, it's not like the U.S. You might get shot.
Yeah,
You know, they
Yeah.
don't play around down there.
no. So if he hadn't left at the time, we probably wouldn't be hearing from him again.
Yeah, exactly.
And so yeah, he left, you know, at threat of being shot, and then went and just did a quick little interview with the police that day.
Oh, news crews that day.
Or that's what I meant to say. Yeah, the news crews that day, and it wasn't until, you know, I guess 20. It would have been how long? How long ago was 96? My time is that, so 20 years ago.
20 plus years
Yeah,
ago.
but,
Yeah.
but basically there's a 20-something year gap between that interview and the next time he like ever talked about it with anybody
Yeah.
in the documentary Moment of Contact, which to clarify too, the Moment of Contact was created by a guy named James Fox.
Yes.
He's the guy who had this idea and he's the lead researcher on from this documentary and who made this documentary. He's the one who's he's been researching this since then for like 20 years.
Mhm.
And he initially started out saying that, you know, he had been a UFO researcher for like 30 years or something, and someone mentioned this case to him a couple times, and he thought it was way outlandish. He kept dismissing it, and he's like, I don't even want to give that the time of day anytime someone would bring it up. And then he was at some kind of event, and someone of, you know, high prominence that he highly respected, you know, who had an opinion he highly respected, happened to mention it. And that was the point that he was like, well, if this person's talking about it and they're mentioning it, then that's more significance to me. Maybe I need to check this thing out.
Yeah.
And the further he researched it, the more he dove into it, you know, the more interesting it got to him, to the point where he's like, I'm going over there. I would need to talk to these people. I need to find as many witnesses, because it's a lot of UFO things you hear about, like Roswell or stuff like that. You know, they're so long ago that anybody that was related to them, like most of them are gone.
Yeah.
And this just being 96, it's so close that a lot of the people are still alive.
Including me. I was alive during
That's
that
true.
time.
We weren't there. We didn't see it.
We didn't.
But
I
at least not that I remember. I don't think I've been to
I don't
Brazil.
think Mama and Papa took me down to Brazil during 96, but
Maybe they wiped our memory, though.
that is a good point. That is a good point.
The Men in Black do have their deneuralizers.
That's right. So we get the crash,
Yeah.
right?
Military shows up, sends people away, does something with the craft or whatever they found.
Right. We don't have a lot of stuff on that, but people say they destroyed it, or
Yeah.
took it,
They
destroyed the ground afterwards.
Yeah, I would say they like sanitized the area
Yeah.
as a way to say, you know, like
They sent in the fixers. They sent in the
Yeah.
cleaners.
the cleaners to, you know, like, you know, it probably had like metal detectors picking up any fragments found in that area, kind of stuff.
Joke's on them. What if it wasn't metal?
There you go.
But yeah, they sent them in, and then you get some of the stuff that happens inside the city, where there's a few young ladies who come across.
That's the stuff of the city. That's where it starts to get really weird.
So yeah, it crashes on the outskirts of Virginia. There's a couple women walking, two young girls walking through they're taking a shortcut home or whatever. They're crossing.
There's three of them.
I thought they came back and got the third person.
Oh, that well.
Anyways, there's several women, right?
Yeah.
And there's two younger women, and I think they went back and got their mother, who came out again.
Later, yeah.
Later, and they come across and they see this thing, tiny, with large eyes, huddled against a
There's like a big concrete brick wall
yeah.
type of thing, and they just see this little creature just in a very crouched down, you know, huddled position up against the wall that looks like it's injured and scared and helpless.
Yeah.
In a sense. And, you know, they kind of stop. Obviously, you know, it's not anything like anything they've seen before.
Yeah.
And
they described it as being brown with a horrible smell, ammonia, sulfur type of thing.
the worst smell that they've ever smelled.
Couldn't get it out of their nostrils.
Like they talked about, like cleaning their nose, like, you know, flushing their nose with like saline and anything else they could think of to try and get the smell out. But it lasted for like weeks.
Yeah.
It was just stuck in their sinus cavities and stuff.
And they saw it, and they said it looked scared. And then I think they went and grabbed whoever, and they came back. They described it as, they described a footprint that they saw as like having only 3 toes.
Yeah, 3-toed footprint with the middle toe kind of being longer.
Classic gray alien, but brown with large red eyes, 3 kind of nodules on the head, and like very minimal, if any, nose or mouth.
Very oily looking skin.
Very oily skin.
Yeah, very, very strange. And, I think once it made eye contact with him at one point, I think one of the girls, said that they got scared and that's when they left.
They ran away, yeah.
Yeah, they ran away from it.
And it wasn't long after that, a Brazilian military police vehicle with two men riding in it.
They got a report that, they need to go to this one side of the town. They just need to be on the lookout for something strange, is what they were told.
And all of a sudden, here comes brown, oily man running out. As far as we're told, this is what we're told.
Oh yeah,
by
all
by
reports.
Folks. This is all reports, right? Because what happens is one of the officers, Marco Cheresi, grabs this little tiny thing.
They just hop out of the car and go, and he grabs it, bare hands,
snatches it.
And they throw it in the car.
Throw it in the vehicle. Take it to a couple different, take it to one hospital. They're like, no. Take it to another one. They're like, get out of here.
Yeah.
And they take it to like the Campinas or whatever, like medical center. I forget which one it was.
They end up like staying there overnight.
And then eventually what happened was the Marco Cheresi guy winds up dying of a strange illness.
Yeah. He had some kind of strange bacteria of some kind that they didn't know what it was, how he got it or whatever. He probably could have had like an open cut on his hand or something. But just making contact with this being got him infected, and it wasn't long, and he was gone.
Yeah, and so then you get a recovery of at least 2 bodies is what they talk about, or at least 1 live and 1 dead, and then you have all the people there's people in the hospital that report that they took X-rays of the thing. There are people in the military who report driving the things away in a box. And then you get reports of the U.S. Air Force coming in and going to Varginha after they've transported one of the bodies or transported the live one back.
There was an air traffic control guy in what was the town that you just mentioned? The one that they took it to.
But was it Campinas? Or something?
Yeah, Campinas. The air traffic control guy that he had saw that there was 2 helicopters that showed up that left and went to Varginha, and they left there, and then I guess there's
after the U.S. Air Force plane arrived.
Yeah, there was reports that they witnesses saw them loading a crate onto the helicopters. Those 2 helicopters fly back and to the other city and unload whatever this thing is onto this U.S. Air Force plane, which didn't have clearance to land. The plane didn't get clearance. Air traffic control was, telling them that they can't land. Like, they don't have clearance and stuff. They didn't care.
Well, somebody told them, he's like, just let them land.
Yeah. And so they landed, they loaded the thing up and left.
Yep.
No contact with any officials or government or anything. The Brazil government, there was no contact or anything. They just showed up, took it, and left.
Well, we don't know that there wasn't any contact from Brazil because
no official thing.
There's no official report of them cooperating with the U.S. Air Force during that time period. And that's kind of the gist of it. You have the strange death. You have the guy who was with Marco Cheresi, another Brazilian military police officer who refuses to speak about the incident. You have several people that report of seeing it, and Varginha has adopted it in such a way that they have they've got alien spaceships. They've got flying saucers all over town.
Yeah, memorials and stuff too, all over the town, restaurants, and all kinds of things. Most of the people there are convinced and believe that this event happened.
Yeah. Now, when I was watching the documentary, I think it started out a little rough for me. It seemed like he was almost finding his stride as he went. It didn't seem like that well edited at the beginning.
Right.
And it eventually got better, and I enjoyed watching it more. But when they were downtown, a lot of people were saying I think they were real. Of course, that's a curated thing. You didn't see every single person they were talking to. That would be like if I spoke to someone on the side of the street, and I'd be like, hey, do you believe in aliens? I only had the people that said, yes, I do.
Yeah. Survey says, out of 100 people, 2 people said, yeah, and those are the 2 you show.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
But they showed several people, and a lot of them, were speaking to them, and, they had their Portuguese translator and everything there. That part didn't really get me.
No.
At all. I wasn't like, okay.
Yeah.
In Roswell, right? I'm sure there's people in Roswell that don't believe in aliens, don't believe in UFOs. It's a much smaller city than Varginha.
Yeah.
But, like it's definitely a good tourist thing for them.
Right.
And it has been, I think. You know, I
Right.
think they've done well with like their tourism aspect of it. You know, the story is interesting just because I think anytime you start dealing with the tic tac shape or cigar shape UFO, it piques my interest slightly more because unless you're talking about just the fuselage of an airplane, there's not a lot that makes sense about one of those flying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been one of those that's been reported. Like the tic tac or cigar shaped UFO is a very
common,
common one.
Yeah.
Right.
Very often reported.
Yes.
That's what a very common shape amongst UFOs.
I like to think of like people that are like hoaxers or whatever. Like I like to think like the basic way to go would be flying saucer, little green men.
Yes. Yeah. Classic saucer shape.
Yeah. So this guy, you know, in the movie, we talk about the guy who sees the crash, right?
Right. Which that to me was one of those moments in it that it really kind of like I felt added some legitimacy to what was going on.
Yeah, I was 50-50 on it, you know, because it did take him a second to find it. Now he's not from the area. He was traveling to Virginia or through Virginia when he saw the collision, when he saw the aircraft crash. And so he's not super familiar with the area. It would make less sense to me if it was like a local who's like, well, everything's changed. I can't see it. This guy was like a lot of stuff has changed. I'm not sure where it's at. You know, the fact that there was a White House nearby lended it a little bit of credibility to me.
Yeah.
You know,
but like to me, seeing his reaction, his like emotional reaction to it, that once he hadn't been in that spot in 20 something years. And then once he was back there, that you could tell that it was like he was repicturing it all in his mind. He was reliving that moment and he got like very emotional.
And he was the first person unprompted. Now he was one of the first people interviewed, but he was the first person unprompted to mention the smell and how bad it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he mentioned stuff leaking out of it as well.
I don't remember.
Some type of fluid, maybe. You know, he did have a very, very like kind of guttural reaction to being back on the scene of this site, you know, quote unquote site. Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to be a decent actor. I think you'd have to do it. Definitely, if he was faking it, it wasn't his first take. No. Like, there's no way he did that without warming up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I personally wholeheartedly believe that he believes what he saw. At least.
Sure.
Like, I also, part of me also believes that you know, what he saw did happen.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty convinced of it, but I like 100% am convinced that he at least believes what he saw happened.
Yeah, I think it is definitely compelling when his testimony, because at first it's like, oh, this is kind of getting old. Now, I'm glad that they showed kind of like how hard it was for them to get there and figure out where it was, because that lends a little bit more credibility to them than rather than just showing up and saying, it happened right here.
It was right. Like it was pre-set up.
The fact that he kept getting out of the car, he's like, no, this isn't it. There was like a White House nearby and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, then we get the artist recreation or the animated recreation of where it happened at.
Yeah.
And it makes more sense. And I heard, was it James is his name? The guy that's doing it. I heard him talking about that he had spoken to like a geologist and they're like, that area, there was some type of weird, like when they watched the documentary, that they were like, that area right there is really unique because of X, Y, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I will say this, though, and this is kind of like preempting all that. I don't know why James wouldn't be more interested in it, because it is such a more recent thing. Like, if I hear about something happening in another country, I'm more interested than if I hear it happening in the U.S.
It was just how fantastical the claims were on it. That he even said in his, he was on Joe Rogan. That's where I've heard about it, I was watching that. And when he talked about it on there, about how, again, that looking back on it now, that he found it was crazy that someone who had been, literally their thing was studying UFOs and who had been doing it for 30 years, when anybody would mention that, they're like, I mean, you know, I study UFOs, but that's a little crazy kind of thing. You know, what do you mean? Like they captured these beings and like the police arrested them and like all this, and these girls like ran into all this stuff. It seems crazy, but then yeah, again, it was once he looked into it.
That's not that fantastical to me, though. That's why I guess what I'm trying to say is like when we talk about
Oh, no.
Roswell and Little Green Men and like people like the government coming and taking things away and maybe live creatures and then taking the aircraft away. Everything's the same except there's just a little bit more of it. There's more civilians that are there because
Right.
it's in a urban environment.
It's not just out in the middle of the Nevada desert.
Yes, and so I think that's one of those things. Or New Mexico, Roswell, New Mexico.
Oh, you're right.
So the I'm just playing devil's advocate so on this
Of course.
because I think it has to be done. I think people have to look at it through that lens if you want to be credible. And I think that's one of the things, like I said, I like that he added in how hard it was for him to find it.
Right. Well, that's the unfortunate thing about the entire topic of UFOs, UAPs, aliens, extraterrestrials, any of that stuff, that 95% of it, 99% of it that you see out there is either stuff that can be debunked or, proven false or just, again, hoaxers.
Yeah.
Stuff that, a trick of the eye, a trick of the camera, this or that or whatever. But it's really those special cases like this and those like 5% of other sightings and stuff that there's either too much evidence or there's not enough evidence to claim either way. That you can't just dismiss it because of too much evidence, or you can't, disprove it because how little evidence there is or something.
Yeah. So I like the first guy, and then we get into the actual incident with the children inside Virginia proper.
Yeah.
Where they're running around there. And they see this thing, right? They describe it as like this weird looking. First of all,
what would you do in that situation? If you were in if you were like
know,
walking around
man.
downtown or like here and you're going to your car or something, and like you just look over and you literally see what they describe, this hunched down, little thin, big eyed, red, slimy, like I feel like I would initially just freeze out of like fear or something.
I'm not going to say I wouldn't freeze because I think that's like a little bit too, bravos of me to say that I wouldn't.
Right.
But I think when I was a younger man, I would have been like, I'm going to kill it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And now I've actually had this thought some in my life where I was like, especially, some of the work for the government and everything that's happened, I've done in the past. I've like, well, what if I did come across something?
Right. Unknown
like that. I'm like, well, I don't think I need to point a gun at it, like maybe I need to be like, hey, are you
like,
I'm here to help.
And that's the thing at one point, even just maybe a handful of years ago, if I would have seen that, I'm sure I had talked about it in our aliens episode that, so much of my childhood and life and stuff was, I had so many nightmares about being abducted by aliens. And they've always been one of my biggest like fears because that, like, anytime I would be outside at night, I would always get that like jitteriness, that kind of feeling, that people talk about if you live in a home with stairs and you turn the light off downstairs and you have to run upstairs really quick because you just feel like something's chasing you. Just that general feeling, but anytime I was outside in the dark kind of thing, because it's just the open sky above you. And that's something that's, stuck with me through a lot of my life, even in a lot of my adult life, but it's even just been in the past number of years where I've really tried to shift my perspective on that and kind of realized that most of that fear was, predicated based on, Hollywood and things that, media and stuff had bred into me.
They're almost always antagonists of some sort. Aliens are almost always antagonists of some sort. So I think as a younger man, I probably would have been like,
you ain't probing me.
I am the law. And like just gone Judge Dredd on it and been like, well, obviously I'm going to, but in real world, like if aliens, like an extraterrestrial species is here, right. And they're able to cover long distances and I was to blast it, it would be just like, people are afraid of going to like North Sentinel Island, because there's a lot of people that are living their primitive lifestyle and you can't get close to it without them shooting you full of bows and arrows. Yeah. At some point, right, that they're either going to go there, somebody's going to go there and they're going to be like, we're bringing guns with us. And because every time we go there, some dude shoots our buddy with an arrow,
Right.
or throws a spear into them. It's the same thing. If somebody can travel vast distances
that's the thing.
across the cosmos,
If they're able to do that, then like if they were antagonistic and threats to us, and again, if like you say, they were able to travel that far, taking us out wouldn't be an effort at all.
well, yeah, maybe hand-to-hand combat or whatever,
Right.
maybe like, in a shooting match with an unarmed alien,
Right.
I think I would win, or especially if the skin's not bulletproof. But with that said, like, if you're going to go there, if they're
Right.
going to come here in force, they're like, well, we actually want to have a mine here.
Yeah.
Or if somebody realized they did some like kind of like, ground penetrating radar from a plane as they were flying over North Sentinel Island, they realized it was sitting on the largest gold reserve.
Right.
Right. Because of the reputation that North Sentinel Island has, they're going to go there. They're not going to go there with gifts. They're going to go there with AKs or M4s or like that kind of thing. They're going to go there with weapons because they're expecting trouble.
Right.
And probably a lot of the North Sentinelese people are going to die in the process. And I think that is a concern that I have because, like, obviously it's like a 0.000000001% chance that A, it's real, and then B, that I would run into that situation if it is real.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think as an adult now, where I'm at now, I don't think I would touch it. But I think I would. I think I would have to say, maybe if you're kind to it. But that's
my first reaction now. I would hope that obviously I think I would freeze just due to my past and my thoughts about it. I don't think I could help but have a little bit of freeze. But I would hope that I would be able to fight through that enough and my first real reaction to try to make contact of some kind, to talk to it. Say, do you need help? We come in peace.
And from what I understand, most aliens speak English, and that's just something. Right. From what I understand, most aliens, every movie I've ever seen,
right? I mean, truthfully, like I wouldn't be surprised. It's one of those things that, like, I don't know. I might would just try to think it at it, and see if it could pick that up.
Well, in listening to that podcast too, apparently the one of the girls reported that it was inside of her head and said, I'm scared.
That's where it wasn't so much that, like, it was half kind of seeing it, but she was getting this emotion kind of mentally that it was scared and hurt and stuff, that was somehow being transmitted some kind.
Now, these girls all have very vivid depictions of this thing.
Yeah.
Of whatever this creature is. They all have very vivid depictions of like what this thing looked like. Another person came and saw the footprints, right? It was definitely, and their stories are all pretty similar.
Yeah.
Right. And they were within 10 feet of it.
Yeah.
They were close.
Very close.
Close. Right. Smelling distance close because they all reported how bad it smelled. The Brazilian government, when they did their study in 2010, just said, oh, that was Modinho, an autistic kid who likes to squat down and study things. That's what they said. A mute autistic person.
Right. And
there are pictures of Modinho. I think Modinho means like little mute or something like that in Portuguese. And so they said, yeah, that's what it is. It was the girls didn't see a creature. They saw Modinho, and, maybe he was unshowered or whatever. There are pictures of Modinho. He's kind of like a skinny dude. He definitely likes to squat down and like.
He's a squatter.
Well, he does. He like apparently like that's his thing. Like he finds stuff and he just like plays with it or whatever.
Yeah.
And I would think that women who lived in that area who cut through there probably on the regular, would probably know that that's Modinho. And I think they'd be able to tell somebody of their own ethnicity, their own race, and nationality from their own town.
Like if it was
from
one
creature.
If it's one witness, sure, you might get attributed that.
But, and during the daytime.
Yeah.
This wasn't at nighttime.
No.
It wasn't like Modinho had found a pair of sunglasses at nighttime and they looked over and they saw big eyes. No, this was another Brazilian man.
Yeah.
Who same skin tone, same language. Well, he doesn't speak. He's mute, but same features.
Yeah.
And probably wearing human clothes, or like they, apparently sometimes he wears a diaper or something like that. But every picture I've seen of him, he was wearing like clothes.
Right.
So the likelihood that it was like Modinho,
and the likelihood that 4 people would mistaken it in broad daylight,
yeah,
it's very unlikely.
So that's an issue where I find some problems with what the Brazilian government has said, because it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. That's not the most compelling argument on their behalf. Now, I've seen skeptics who said, well, that's just Modinho. They mistook a dude named Modinho for an alien.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at Modinho, I'm like, how? It doesn't make any sense. And I don't mean this, I'm not trying to be mean in any certain way, but he does not like physically, there were some people out there with some like, if you were one of those girls and you had never seen somebody with like elephantitis, right, and you came over there and you saw
that would look alien.
That would look alien to you if you weren't familiar with it, right? Mm-hmm. You would get that kind of like, oh, pitchfork and grab your torches and like, what is it? We don't understand it, right?
Yeah.
But
again, this also isn't like in the 20s or 30s. This is 96.
This is 1996.
We're in modern times.
Yeah, and then the pictures that were what the mother believed was that there was like 3 toes, like one really long, one too long. And she even was like, hey, I don't know. I didn't really look at his feet much, but these were the footprints that were left behind. But then again, we get the common denominator throughout all of this, which is horrible, horrible smell.
Yeah.
So that lends, why do aliens smell like ammonia, Josh?
I don't know. And this is one of the first times that I've heard many alien related stories and accounts and stuff. And this is one of the first ones that I particularly remember hearing about a smell like that, a smell being present and to such a potent degree.
Now, not playing skeptic, to me, I've been in some situations, I've been in some scary situations. I don't remember smells all the time, but I do remember them when they're terrible.
Yeah.
So, I've been around people who have been dead. I've been around a lot of people that have died. I've been around decay and that kind of thing. And so, like, if I say, well, I found some bodies, right? Mm-hmm. I would obviously be like, and it was horrible. Like the stench was bad. It definitely comes back in my memory. Or I might not mention it, which happens a few times. And then when prompted, I would be like, oh, yeah, it was bad. I put an air freshener in my mask because they were melting into the ground or whatever. Like they're bad. So, what we saw Virginia looked like it was not like, there were parts of Rio, like, when you talk about the favelas and like the wealth disparity there and that kind of thing. I imagine that there's a smell in some of the favelas that is potent and terrible, but this was not like a high end area by any stretch, but it looked fairly clean. Like there was not like, there was probably some natural smells in the area, but the fact that
that thing, and amongst that this smell stood out. So
yes, that's a good point.
Potently.
That's right. It was such a
in like a nice, clean, pristine town or something like that, then any smell would probably stand out more.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But even in this place, it still did.
Yeah. And so, they smell this, alien, for lack of a better term, right? Mm-hmm. And they smell it and they're like, what is that? And they report that. And then we get Marco Shiresi, right? The timeline apparently is pretty quick to when the late girls run off to the time that Marco Shiresi and his partner, and I forgot what his partner's name is, they see this thing run across in front of them, according to what people are saying. Yeah. And they capture it.
And my first reaction wouldn't be just to go hands on with it. Like if I'm thinking this thing's from some other place, like, I mean, even just like any wild animal, I'm not going to touch it without gloves. Because like, who knows what? I mean, I guess in the 1990s, in the haste of the moment, if it was running away or something, you'd probably just be as quick as you can.
Yeah, and I think that's what was probably going on in the 1990s. Especially a military police officer in Brazil. I'm sure they, obviously they can have gloves, but
that's not a common procedure, probably.
They're not. I think in in the 90s, there were some issues with, people being worried about bodily fluids and that type of things. But, in Brazil particular, there wasn't like a lot of, intravenous narcotic usage. Right. There wasn't a lot of IV narcotics or, that kind of thing. And so I imagine it's it's not one of those things that they're really quick to put on gloves when they come across something like that. And
Yeah.
they are, you know, I'll be honest, like I said earlier, Brazilian police and Brazilian soldiers, they go through a lot, especially because there are military. There's like they have state police, they have military police, who have like jurisdiction where they're able to operate and enforce laws like federal laws.
Mm.
And so there's several different police agencies within Brazil, similar to like some of the other Latin American countries. And sure, or like like France. Like France has like they have like local police, but then they also have like the gendarme, which is like a federal federal military police essentially. And in the same way, like they get stuff done. They're they deal with a lot. You can find videos on YouTube of them in situations that are pretty harrowing. And, I think that also adds to like, oh, it makes sense that one of them would just go snatch this thing.
Right. I mean, again, military police, you've given orders to go search for something strange. And like, you see that and you're going to instantly know that's probably the strange thing we're looking for.
Yeah.
And so, that's your orders are to get it. So you're probably going to do anything you can to fulfill those orders and get this thing.
Yeah. So we don't get to hear from the other soldier, the other military police officer, because he will not do interviews. And they go to his house and he's like,
yeah, they go to try and visit him to try and talk to him.
Like, if this is about the UFO, no.
Yeah, he just immediately shuts him down. No.
And James went with some people, like I think he went with the mayor.
He went with the mayor.
He went with the mayor of Varginha, who believes the incident occurred, and he went with like somebody the mayor was related to, was also a local attorney,
like one of his nephews or something like that. Yeah.
And so they go there, and he refuses to talk. He's got a gun in his hand the whole time.
He's like shaking his finger at them to like nope, I'm not going to talk to you.
He's like, get off my lawn. He goes full Gran Torino on him.
Yeah.
And it's just like, not happening today. And so I do think it's interesting. So I think it's interesting. Like we don't have anything from the partner. We don't know anything about what his side of the story is. But we also don't have him just saying, like, you think he would have some stuff recorded or out there. It would be just like, no, nothing happened.
And what I think kind of what happened with him too is going back to the girls that saw it and that they brought their mother out who mentioned the footprints and stuff. Later on, like that night, the mom talked about that these guys showed up at their house.
Yeah, it was either that night or the next day,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that these guys showed up in like suits and stuff, but like they didn't look like cops. They didn't look like
they were Americans,
military people. They just looked like regular people, but they came in and basically tried to bribe her and told her, not to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
You saw nothing. This didn't happen. Just forget that any of this thing. Don't bring it up. Don't talk about it or anything. And had just a suitcase that they had with them. I don't know if they actually opened it to show it was in or not, but they had a suitcase with them, probably with money or something. I think they said that. I think they mentioned that it could be money that could be hers, kind of thing. But she just denied it and all this stuff, and because she didn't want to say that her daughters were liars. She didn't want to come out and label them as liars. She didn't think that was right, so she refused it. And then they kind of left her. They walked outside, and she went to kind of follow them, and their car was gone, and they were nowhere in sight. And so my suspicion is that they went and talked to this other MP, and he took the deal. They went and said he didn't see anything. Don't talk about this, and he was like, "All righty, I will take you up on that offer." And that's where he's at right now.
Yeah, it is very interesting. It makes, but to me, part of the skeptical, my skeptical mind says also like, hey, why not just have him come out there? Like, because it's more, obviously it brings more attention to the case, but you would have thought in the investigation that occurred in 2010, right, where the military came out with a 372-page paper on the incident, and they kind of had convenient answers for everything that happened in 1996. And that's when the skeptics point to. They say, well, they've got answers for this and this and this and how they're all unrelated. How do you do that from that far away?
Right.
Almost, 20 something years ago. So that's also confusing for me. But why wouldn't you bring him in and have his statement and have him be like, okay, it's okay to talk to people. You just got to say nothing happened. Because one of the official stories is that Marco Cerese had like a cyst under his armpit that he was planning to get a surgery, and it was pre-planned surgery on, and that he got an infection from that surgery a couple weeks later. And that's how he passed away, was from sepsis.
Right. But then, on the devil's advocate of that, like, maybe those are falsified records and appointments.
That's pretty easy to do.
That's pretty easy to falsify that and come up with a backstory.
We also get some of his family members, I don't think it was his wife. Well, his wife was involved. Yes, it was actually his wife and other folks who were involved.
His daughters, and particularly, too, we're talking about.
They talked about it as well. So, there is something to like, hey, let's have a hero or do whatever. But, I don't understand why they would continually put themselves through the stress. A lot of people say, well, they don't have any reason to fake things. I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
I hear people say, well, nothing good's going to come from that. You hear that with Bob Lazar,
Yeah.
Nothing good happens from it. There are just some people who want to be interesting.
Yeah.
To be honest, there is always a reason for somebody to fake something, even if it has some detriment to them,
Yeah.
I say I'm allergic to bananas. I'm not. I just don't like bananas. And so instead people are like, well, I'm not going to give you banana pudding. And maybe I would love banana pudding. You
would. It's so good.
I doubt it. But I don't like them, right? It's the same kind of thing. I do it because I don't feel like answering the questions like, why don't you like bananas? Have you ever had this?
Right.
It's the same thing. We talked about in our Bigfoot episode, some police officers from Georgia, some goons down there.
That's a prime example
who faked having a Bigfoot. They got nothing out of it except for fired from their jobs. Now, had they have not got fired from their job, had they have just claimed it was seeing something, they're like, well, they just saw something and that's the end of it. And they would have their story like nothing good ever happens from this. But some people just want to be interviewed on a documentary. Some people just want to have something going on.
Their 5 minutes of fame.
Some people are insane. Some people have mental health issues.
Right.
Right.
A lot of those one-offs that I guarantee a lot of them could be attributed to things like schizophrenia or, some kind of hallucinations of some kind, whether it be, illicit drugs or other types of causes. But again, with as many as those are, every now and then there's those ones where there's too many witnesses and too many corroborating stories of the same event happening. And it's enough credible evidence that you can't really attribute it to any of those other causes, and you kind of have to give a little weight behind it.
You do. One of the things I find, especially from UFO researchers, like, you get your Jeremy Corbell or this James guy, they suddenly become experts on human behavior. And that is a red flag to me when they're like, he's telling the truth. Well, he's not. Like, we don't know that he's telling the truth. The truth is between that person and what they saw, and sometimes it's between that person and actual reality and what actually happened. And so, the fact that their family would continually put themselves through things in this, including the wife who was interviewed shortly afterwards, young, she was like a young, beautiful lady. They hadn't been married long. And she's like,
yeah.
She wants to have answers for it. Why would she need answers if he just got a cyst and had sepsis?
Right.
Right.
Then in her head, that would be an easily plausible outcome to that. But, his family who knows him so well and knows those kinds of things, if they're trying to get answers and failing at them and getting frustrated by it, then that would lead you to believe that it wasn't some pre-existing condition that, was already around that finally just took its toll on him. It wasn't until this event happened and he grabbed that thing and became sick from it that stuff started happening.
The second thing we haven't mentioned is that the second creature was captured.
Yeah, there was multiple bodies reported.
Was captured by the fire department. And when they show the video of the fire department speaking about the capture of the creature, what are they holding? An animal catcher. They have like a They
Oh,
have
right.
one of those noose things.
Yeah. Oh, the little like the rods with like the rope that like extends and stuff.
Exactly, like you're catching a rabid dog, like you're catching a
Yeah.
dog. There was like a dog
Like a
catcher.
coyote or something.
It was
Yeah.
a catch. It's called a catch pole, actually, is what the name of it's called.
Yeah.
Literally what it is, a pole that catches things. So it was a catch pole, and they're showing that off. And so they never actually, that's one thing that bothered me was they never tracked down anybody from the fire department in this to corroborate how that went or talk about it more. And I would have liked to at least seen that been stonewalled as well.
It very well, yeah, could have been one of those cases where they just kept hitting a bunch of dead ends and couldn't find any leads, and so they just omitted it so that you weren't just running into dead ends over and over again in at least, in the documentaries, because it's still a production. But, there potentially could have been a lot more research that just wasn't included in that. But how was it that one of the other ones winded up at the hospital?
Well, I think that's the other one that was captured. There was two that were captured, right? Because the official story is, right, all this hospital hubbub was a couple with dwarfism who were going into labor.
Oh, my God.
Right. So once again, now I get it. I get people saying, well, they think it was a Bigfoot and it was actually a black bear.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's a big, hairy thing walking.
Yeah.
Right. But this is 1996. People understand what people with dwarfism look like. And we're talking about, it's not somebody from North Sentinel Island. Right. This is just me being honest. If you're somebody from North Sentinel Island, right, and you've never seen someone with melanin in their skin, that's probably really confusing. Just the same as when you have some of those Amazonian tribes from Brazil, the first time they see a white man, right? Papua New Guinea, they see a white man. They say, whoa, why is this person not having any melanin in their skin, right? It's a confusing thing. We're talking about local people who possibly have dwarfism, right?
Right. They would probably be part of the community. People would know who they were.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. There's no, like, that is a silly argument. They're like, well, how do we explain to, like, two smaller stature folks? Oh, well, there's two people with dwarfism who are going into labor at the hospital. And
then we get the account of the doctor.
Who the X-ray, are you talking about the X-ray technician? Yeah, X-ray technician, where he takes, it wasn't through.
So he was in the hospital, and then the military comes in with a stretcher and a body bag zipped up on this stretcher. And they wheel it back there, and they basically just like force their way into this room, and they tell this guy, take x-rays of this. And they kind of just like, and I'm pretty sure some of the guys had like the militaries that had like guns and everything, and they're like, you're taking x-rays of this. And so he's like, okay. I mean, what are you're not going to say no.
Yeah.
And so he takes x-rays, but through the body bag. They didn't let him open the bag.
Yeah.
And so he takes it through the bag, and normally, being an x-ray technician, you take the x-rays, you develop them, and you check to see if it worked.
Yeah.
Because that's how x-ray tech, you had the films and all the stuff back then. You would check it to see if it developed, but they didn't even let him check them.
Check it. Yeah.
They immediately just took them, and then when they took it, and then they left.
Because nowadays, like now, as you're doing an x-ray, because my son's had a million of them. My son has a congenital heart disease. And so, when they did chest x-rays and stuff on him all the time, you'll see it, like they take a picture of him and it instantly pops up on the screen. And unfortunately, I've gotten kind of good at reading those. I'm like, oh man, there's some fluid on his lungs, that kind of thing. So back then, you would have to develop the film or do whatever. And so they take the film and they go. I think that is a little.
He also mentioned the smell, that they had to close down a wing of the hospital because the smell was so bad.
Yeah, they had to close out the x-ray rooms because of the smell. Now, that was a prompted question. That was one of the only ones that was really a prompted question. We're like, can you tell me about the smell? But it was an open-ended question where the subject, where the guy, where this ER technician was like, oh, smell was horrible. And they all described it as like sulfur, rotten egg, ammonia type things.
Yeah. So that again, that account I think was very valuable as well, of a prominent, person of the hospital making that statement and stuff. And yeah, that just not being able to even like open the bag or see anything. And like they mentioned that there was a guy there that had a camera, but he just kind of had it down by his waist, like he wasn't actively using it.
It was the transport soldier, one of the soldiers who was driving the transport truck, said he came in, he saw the creature's legs or something on the table, mostly covered up, and there was one soldier in there with like a video camera that was slung, and like just kind of hanging down. And I mean, that makes sense. Like if he got there, there's probably the people that were probably taking the initial like video of everything probably, were already done filming. It'd be a little
Right.
weird. Like if 3 hours later, this guy was still doing like a whole
Yeah.
filling up a VHS tape with it.
Right.
So, yeah, they get there. I think he also mentioned a smell, how bad it smelled. And he took that one. So from what I think was, if I remember correctly, that was the one that Marco Terese probably caught. And the one the fire department caught with the catch pole, I think lived. I think the one that Marco Terese caught wound up dying.
Yeah.
Quote unquote,
Of course.
as they say. And then, then you've got the other thing that I think is interesting too about this. One of the things that like gets me going, and it is a U.S. made documentary, but the fact that the U.S. is involved in it. Now we have a lot of foreign listeners, right? And I don't think the U.S. is the center of the universe, right?
No.
There are a lot of amazing cultures out there. The Brazilians are very proud of their culture and of their nation, and I find it interesting that the U.S. would
intervene,
would be able to go down there, essentially unmolested, right? And
take over this, incident, assume control.
Yes.
Because a lot of people attribute that to, because of things like Roswell or who knows how many other events that, the U.S. has the infrastructure and the capabilities to deal with such a thing, whether it be crash retrieval or, body retrieval and housing or something like that, we have all these facilities set up in some, deep underground military base, whereas like Brazil, they just don't have that infrastructure. They don't have any of that stuff set up. And so the U.S. it only made sense for them to come in and exfiltrate what they could.
Yeah. And, I see that, it does make us sound like we're like, oh, well, Brazil doesn't know what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. I think if they were like, well, we don't, that makes sense, right? I think, obviously the Brazilian doctors are plenty capable. They're as capable as probably any American doctor is. Their military is less experienced in combat. Brazil hasn't fought they went to World War II, World War One, like very small contingencies of them when Brazil was still an empire back in the day. I think a Brazilian empire in like World War One.
But if they haven't had like, if they never had a Area 51 type event till then, until you have something like that happen in your country, like there may not be a need to create such a facility or entity to deal with such events. Until you have an alien spaceship crash, you're not going to preemptively build a place to house crashed spaceships.
And it would also make sense that there is, some type of thing. So if there are aliens and if there are UFOs and if we are aware of them and we're not aware of where they come from, and there is some type of defensive pact between North American and South American countries, it would make sense because, obviously there are a lot of rural areas in Brazil, but particularly the southwest of the United States that has all those military installations that are so uniquely guarded and so uniquely sequestered that it makes sense that you could bring something there and study, and you could be like, hey, we'll give you access, we'll do whatever, but this is probably like, do you want to take it to area, blah, 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 blah. Right. So it's also interesting for so many folks because there was a few people that mentioned Americans coming. We had, I think the transport truck driver talked about Americans. We had the aircraft controller talking about Americans. We had the mother who said, being offered money by Portuguese speaking Americans.
Right.
It is a little American centric, which is interesting to me.
For sure. Definitely. Like they definitely played a part in some capacity.
Yeah. Now, I think if somebody was like, hey, if you say your son's lying, we'll give you a bunch of money. I'm like, okay, I'll take the money. Who cares? That's like such a weird statement to me. Like, I don't want people thinking my daughters are liars. And I get that to a point, but it's going to blow over. It's going to blow over pretty quickly.
I'd be conflicted on that.
Would you?
Yeah. And depending on if it was like an alien thing specifically, really, like I feel like I would stand my ground.
I don't know if that I would, because I think they would like heart attack gun you or something like
Also
that.
an option, yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, I'm pretty sure I could. There's unfortunately you know, the government has a monopoly on violence when it comes to like protecting,
Yeah,
you know, their secrets and all
that's
that
true.
kind of things. And I don't know. You know, one of the things I think is funny too, though, is and I'm bringing this up because it's something I hear a lot, and it's been like, well, if the world knew, everybody would go nuts, or if the world
Yeah.
knew the truth.
But that's the why they haven't told us is that society would collapse.
So why would it collapse? What would lead to our society collapsing? And that's what makes me. Sometimes I'm like, oh, do they know we're in a video game? Because what would make the society collapse unless it was something that was like, okay, well, there's just no point anymore. Let's just go party. Let's just turn this.
If this exists, then yeah, what's the point in?
Yeah, like
in
if I'm in a
doing
video
anything else?
game, well, I'm out. You know, like let's just do whatever.
I'm gonna level up.
Yeah, let's just drive as fast as we want. Who
Grand
cares?
Theft Auto.
Yeah, you know, because I hear that a lot.
I think a lot of the people who claim that and stuff, they're a lot of them I've heard they go down the religious route with that, where it, you know, the sheer fact and, you know, possibility of there being life outside of Earth puts into question a lot of religious aspects.
I don't think it does at all, though. I think if you're like a Judeo-Christian, the fact that people exist out, like you believe that God created the universe and everything in it,
You're also a logical thinker.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I am.
I feel like there's a lot of people in the world that aren't.
But when you make those statements, though, when you make those statements that are so, you know, so inflammatory, like if they find out it's the end of the world, man, the society will collapse.
Yeah, I think a lot of that too falls into that fear mongering aspect again that we talked about. It's just
or it makes you wonder if the government is, you know, like if we find out we are, you know, I talked about one of my books that I'm trying to write, where I speak about, you know, like we turns out we're a part of a galactic federation and we don't know it, you know, finding out that like our government, we aren't in control and we are subservient, and eventually we're going to be asked to do something and there's no way we can fight it. I think that could be an issue that would lead to societal collapse.
Yeah.
But I think it would lead to just people, honestly, there'd be a lot of people just like, okay, well, what do we got to do? You know, orcs or whatever our alien overlords are called, and go do it. Cylons rebelled, but Cylons were made by man, but they rebelled.
Well, so taking it as a whole, what's your gut reaction?
My gut
if you had to go one way or the other.
My gut reaction,
yes or no,
to the Varginha, Brazil
UFO incident, moment of contact.
Moment of contact is,
did it happen? Did it not happen?
So, you know me,
this one's tough.
I'm farther down. You know, you are much more like, you know, like I said, I'm like a 51% Bigfoot, 49% not Bigfoot, and I'm a 50% alien, 50% not alien.
You're riding that line a little more.
I'm riding the line. The smells get me because I've been in situations that are harrowing, where there's been a lot of really bad smells, and I'm like, well, you know, like if somebody's like, oh. Like if I drove by, there's certain places, like I'm like, you know, if I went there, I'm like, you know, certain places in the world, if I went there, I'm like, I smelled a burned body in that place. I saw that some guy burned alive, and then somebody's like, what did it smell like? Well, it smelled like this. I could describe it, you know, I would remember.
You could recall that,
because olfactory senses are a big, you know, like there's a lot of memory tied to olfactory senses.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
I think that the creature that they saw was not Modinho. Was not just like an autistic guy, you know, who lived in the same close neighborhood as them. Pre-cell phones, where people were wandering around and playing in the streets more often, you know, and probably would have come into contact with him more, and probably were a little bit tighter knit community. I don't think the creature that they saw was Modinho. I think it is interesting. You know, I've heard some of the skeptics say that there's some, you know, there's explanations for everything, and it wasn't until the girls said stuff that other people started coming out with things. I'm going to say 55% happened, 45% didn't happen.
Ooh, you heard it here.
55% happened, 45% didn't happen. And the biggest thing that would throw it over the edge to me to a more positive note would be as if there was, obviously video evidence, or if we had whatever, that would be like the gold standard. But if we had more from the fire department who had the catch pole, I would like to see more of that and translated in English, the story that they were talking about.
Yeah.
And Marco Terese's associate, his corporal or whatever, his sergeant, whatever he was, who was riding with him, has to give us something one way or the other.
Again, this is one of those things that, James Fox even talked about, just because this documentary came out and stuff, that the research on this isn't done. They're very well, as this documentary has been blowing up here lately and stuff, that very well could be that somebody watches it and has a change of heart and decides to come out and give more evidence. So who knows what we may hear.
And I'll say overall 7 out of 10 to 8 out of 10. 7 out of 10 documentary wise. I think there's definitely been, I don't love the way he filmed it. I don't love some of the way it was done. I think it could have been a lot more neat, but it was also more grassroots, kind of like amateur, it felt like, which
they had a small team doing it,
which also was nice. I would say if you're looking for a UFO documentary, if you're looking for something to watch, if this piques your interest and your wife is going to fall asleep, or your husband's going to fall asleep, or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your children are going to fall asleep while you're watching it, take an hour and a half and watch it.
Yeah.
It is interesting, but take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah. If I had to put a thing, I think it happened. I'm like
100.
I'm like 95 at least.
Okay.
I leave a little bit of room just for some type of anomaly of some kind, some kind of other thing, but I'm pretty well convinced that, I feel like something definitely happened there that involved some kind of otherworldly creature and craft of some kind.
Yeah. I mean, you have a military base close by.
Yeah.
Like, 45 minutes away. If you guys know that you shot it down, or you guys know that you might have hit it, it's easy to stand up forces. It's easy to get them moving.
Yeah.
With a dedicated military base. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there that is interesting. I've read some interesting skeptical things. There's some things the skeptics, I think, just take with a grain of salt. I don't always believe the government. You can't do that. It's definitely not where you should go when it comes to things, because everybody's got something they're trying to do,
Yeah.
Just like us right now. We're trying to get you to listen to podcasts. We want you to listen to our podcast. That's our agenda, is to listen to us and become part of our thing, become part of our family.
Yeah.
And do all that. And, everybody's got one. We don't know what theirs are. And I don't know what James's is, but it definitely seems like he's interested in this. And
I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about it.
I do too. He's out there wanting people to come out and speak to, because he thinks people actually had video cameras or took video of it prior to the military arriving.
Right.
And to our Brazilian listeners, I would say, if you know somebody that knows something, then
yeah. And James Fox is on Twitter, and he's been very active on there and stuff. So if you know something or have some information, send it to him.
That's right.
I'm sure he'd love that.
Or
send it to us.
And
we'll break a story.
And yeah, we'll give you a year Patreon discount.
Patreon subscription.
You'll get a year Patreon subscription, and we'll split the money with you.
Yeah, there you go.
33. How's that sound?
Oh.
And then 1% we'll give to some company that gets rid of ammonia smells in hospitals.
You're right.
Some charity for that.
Mr. Clean. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a Mr. Clean charity. Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, I definitely interesting. I think we covered the majority of it. It's not like, we're not going to go fact for fact. This isn't going to be like a series that we talk about other things, but we do want to talk about these specific incidents as they come up or as that we find them through interesting.
Yeah. And if you want to, if you watch the documentary and find it interesting and you want to hear a little more about it, again, like check out his episode that he did with Joe Rogan. Like he dives into it a little more.
He's a little all over the place there.
A little bit. It's a little, scattered, but there is some extra contextual information in
that
there.
Actually turned his episode actually turned me off from it a little bit. Just
really?
Because he, like I said, when
I wonder if it worked better in my way, where I heard the podcast first,
Yes,
and then saw the documentary.
See, I watched it first, and then I heard him,
Oh,
and it's one of those things where he starts leaping to conclusions or starts saying people are honest.
I see what you're
He's like,
saying.
they're the best. They got to be the best actor in the world. And when you come in with that,
when someone points that kind of stuff out too much, it almost discredits it.
it does.
I see what
It
you're
bothers
saying.
me. And so you see that with sometimes with Jeremy Corbell or Rob, like that kind of thing, where
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, dude, he's telling the truth." Like, you're not a body language expert. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, we
I
don't
get
know.
that. I get that.
And so I think that episode actually turned me off from it a little bit, but I still am interested in it. I still think it's an amazing, and I think it's an amazing thing that's happened. The city's adopted it. The mayor believes it happened,
Yeah.
and yeah,
It's a pretty cool case.
yeah.
You know what else is pretty cool?
What's that, Josh?
Anyone who listens to us and follows us on our social media pages.
What do you mean, like Instagram?
Yeah, like Instagram.
At Geeky DC Podcast.
I almost said that at the same time.
Did we just become best friends?
We did. At Geek ETC Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. You can find us all there. The podcasts are all uploaded to YouTube as well, if you'd rather listen to there, as well as any major podcast platform every Wednesday morning.
Every Wednesday.
Yes, the new episode comes out. So subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon. Leave us 5-star reviews or thumbs ups, likes, subscribes anywhere that you can. Turn on any notification bells, all that jazz.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, go check us out on Patreon.
That's
like
right.
we mentioned earlier, patreon.com/geeketc podcast.
You guys can become part of the crew, and you guys can help us decide, are we going to shoot those aliens down, or are we going to try to welcome them to our new Earth Federation?
Hey, there you go.
And make sure you guys go check out our website, too, where you can also listen to our podcast, hear a little bit about us. Josh also takes the time to type up some show notes and puts a lot of references in there.
Right.
And that's at www.geeketcpod.com, which is World Wide Web, www.
Yes, that's what that stands for. You can go check us out there. Check out the show notes. There's often a link to either Wikipedia pages or just related articles to find out some more information about stuff.
And, if you guys see an alien, grab your fellow geek, because you guys fight better together.
Yeah, and take some pictures and send them to us. Yeah, if you can get that exclusive footage. But either way, whatever you do, always remember to keep geeking out.